Welcome to a transformative journey through the timeless teachings of Stoic philosophy, designed to guide you toward deeper, more restorative sleep. Over the next 2 hours, you'll discover how ancient wisdom from Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca can quiet the anxious mind, release the day's burdens, and cultivate the inner tranquility necessary for truly restful nights. As you listen, let these profound insights gently untangle the worries that keep you awake, reminding you that peace begins not with controlling the world around you, but with mastering the thoughts within. Whether you're struggling with racing thoughts, stress, or simply seeking a more mindful approach to sleep, these Stoic principles offer practical wisdom that has brought calm to restless minds for over 2,000 years. So settle in, breathe deeply, and allow this ancient philosophy to become your companion in the quiet hours, guiding you toward the peaceful rest you deserve. The Ferryman's lesson on the dichotomy of control. Settle in now wherever you are. Let your breath slow, let your shoulders drop, and allow the weight of the day to begin its quiet departure. Tonight, I want to share with you some old wisdom, not the kind found in dusty textbooks, but the kind that has been whispered from teacher to student for over 2,000 years. Stories from those who walked this earth long before us, yet faced the very same struggles that visit you in the small hours of the night. These are not tales of conquest or glory. They are quieter than that. They are stories about peace, about letting go, about finding stillness even when the world refuses to be still. So close your eyes if you wish. There is nothing here you need to see. Only listen, and let these words carry you gently toward rest. The Ferryman's lesson. There once was a ferryman who worked the crossing of a wide and temperamental river in ancient Greece. His name was Philo, and he had ferried travelers across those waters for 40 years. One autumn evening, a young philosopher came to the riverbank, anxious to cross. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind had begun to stir the water into small, restless waves. "We must go now," the young man insisted. "I have an important lecture to deliver in the city by morning. My reputation depends upon it." Philo looked at the sky, then at the water, then back at the young man. He did not move toward his boat. "The river says no," the old ferryman said simply. "The river does not speak," the philosopher replied with irritation. "I will pay you double, triple. Name your price." Philo smiled, the kind of smile that comes from years of watching young men argue with the weather. "Sit with me," he said, lowering himself onto a worn wooden bench near the dock. "Let me tell you something my father told me, and his father told him." The young philosopher, seeing he had no choice, sat down with a huff. "There are two kinds of things in this world," Philo began, his voice as unhurried as the river itself. "There are things you can control and things you cannot. The wind, the waves, the turning of the seasons, the beating of another person's heart. These are beyond your reach. You may shout at them, bargain with them, weep before them, but they will not bend to your will." He paused, watching a leaf drift past on the current. "But there are other things, your own thoughts, your own actions, the way you choose to meet what comes. These belong to you. These are your kingdom, small though it may seem." The young philosopher was quiet now, the urgency draining from his face. "Your lecture," Philo continued, "may or may not happen tomorrow. That is not yours to command. But how you spend this evening, whether in frustration or in peace, that choice is entirely yours. The river does not care about your reputation. But you get to decide whether you suffer tonight or rest." They sat together in silence as the storm rolled in. The young man did not make his lecture the next morning. But years later, when he had grown old himself, he would tell his own students that the most important lesson he ever learned came not from a book, but from a ferryman who taught him to release what he could not hold. And so, as you lie here tonight, consider this. What rivers are you arguing with? What storms are you trying to command? Perhaps, just for these quiet hours, you might set those battles down. They will wait for you if you need them. But tonight you can rest. The wind will blow as it will. The morning will bring what it brings. And you are allowed to simply be here, breathing, safe in this moment. The Emperor's Stone. In Rome, many centuries ago, there lived an emperor named Marcus. He was perhaps the most powerful man in the known world. Yet each night he sat alone in his chambers and wrote in a small journal by candlelight. He did not write decrees or battle plans. He wrote reminders to himself. Quiet words meant for no one else's eyes. One passage he returned to often was this. He would imagine himself rising high above the earth, looking down upon the city of Rome, then higher still until the entire empire became a small shape, then higher until the earth itself was just a pale blue dot suspended in endless darkness. From such a height he would think, what are my troubles? What are the slights and frustrations that seem so large this morning? The man who spoke rudely to me in the forum, the senator who schemes against my policies, the ache in my aging bones, from far enough away, they all become very small. They become almost gentle, almost laughable. This was not meant to diminish his life, but to right-size it. To remember that he was one man in one moment on one small world, and that this somehow was a comfort. There is a stone that sits today in a museum, a stone that Marcus may have held in his own hands. It is smooth and ordinary, the kind of stone a child might skip across a pond. But it is over 2,000 years old. It has outlasted empires. It has watched generations be born, struggle, love, grieve, and return to the earth. And the stone does not worry. It does not lie awake wondering if it said the wrong thing. It does not replay old arguments. It simply exists, patient and quiet, as the centuries wash over it like water. You, of course, are not a stone. You feel deeply, and that is a beautiful thing. But perhaps, just for tonight, you might borrow a little of the stone's peace. You might imagine yourself rising up, gently, above the concerns of the day. See them grow smaller beneath you. They are still there, but they do not need you right now. You have carried enough today. The stone can hold it for a while. Breathe now, slow and deep. The ferryman has shown you what you cannot control. The emperor has shown you how small your troubles can become when seen from far away. These are old truths, worn smooth by time, like river stones. And there are more stories waiting whenever you are ready. But there is no hurry. There is never any hurry here. For now, let your thoughts grow soft. Let them drift like leaves on that ancient river. You are safe. You are held. And the night is long and gentle and full of quiet wisdom. Rest now. If you are still with me, that is good. If you have already begun to drift toward sleep, that is good too. These stories will still be here, whispering their quiet truths, whether you hear every word or not. The Emperor's Stone, the story on impermanence and perspective. In Rome, many centuries ago, there lived an emperor named Marcus. He was perhaps the most powerful man in the known world, yet each night, he sat alone in his chambers and wrote in a small journal by candlelight. He did not write decrees or battle plans. He wrote reminders to himself, quiet words, meant for no one else's eyes. One passage he returned to often was this. He would imagine himself rising high above the earth, looking down upon the city of Rome, then higher still, until the entire empire became a small shape, then higher, until the earth itself was just a pale blue dot, suspended in endless darkness. From such a height he would think, what are my troubles? What are the slights and frustrations that seem so large this morning? The man who spoke rudely to me in the forum, the senator who schemes against my policies, The ache in my aging bones, from far enough away, they all become very small. They become almost gentle, almost laughable. This was not meant to diminish his life, but to right-size it. To remember that he was one man, in one moment on one small world, and that this, somehow, was a comfort. There is a stone that sits today in a museum, a stone that Marcus may have held in his own hands. It is smooth and ordinary, the kind of stone a child might skip across a pond. But it is over 2,000 years old. It has outlasted empires. It has watched generations be born, struggle, love, grieve, and return to the earth. And the stone does not worry. It does not lie awake wondering if it said the wrong thing. It does not replay old arguments. It simply exists, patient and quiet, as the centuries wash over it like water. You, of course, are not a stone. You feel deeply, and that is a beautiful thing. But perhaps, just for tonight, you might borrow a little of the stone's peace. You might imagine yourself rising up, gently, above the concerns of the day. See them grow smaller beneath you. They are still there, but they do not need you right now. You have carried enough today. The stone can hold it for a while. The Emperor has shown you how small your troubles can become when seen from far away. This is an old truth worn smooth by time, like river stones. Let your thoughts grow soft. Let them drift like clouds across that vast, dark sky. You are safe. You are held. And the night stretches out before you, patient and endless. Rest now. The Blacksmith's Fire. The story on Amor, Fati, or loving one's fate. Let us continue now, to a small village where a blacksmith is about to learn something that will change the way he sees his entire life. In a village nestled in the hills of ancient Phrygia, there lived a blacksmith named Demetrius. He was known throughout the region for his skill, but even more for his unusual temperament. While other men cursed their misfortunes, Demetrius seemed to welcome them. One winter, a terrible fire swept through the village. It consumed his workshop, his tools, the fruits of 20 years of labor. His neighbors gathered around the smoking ruins, their faces heavy with sympathy. "What a tragedy," they murmured. "Poor Demetrius. He has lost everything." But Demetrius stood among the ashes with a curious expression. Not joy exactly, but something like acceptance, perhaps even gratitude. "I have not lost everything," he said quietly. "I have lost some things. But look," he held up his hands, still strong, still capable. "These remain. And look," he gestured to his family, huddled together but unharmed. "They remain. And look," he touched his chest. "This remains. The fire that burns in here, the one that taught me to shape metal in the first place. That fire cannot be touched by any flame." His neighbors thought him mad, but Demetrius simply began to rebuild. Years later, a traveling philosopher passed through the village and heard the story of the blacksmith who thanked the fire that destroyed his livelihood. Intrigued, he sought out Demetrius, now an old man, still working his forge. "They say you loved your misfortune," the philosopher said. "How can this be?" Demetrius set down his hammer and wiped his brow. "Loved it? Perhaps that is too simple. But I did not fight it. You see, I learned long ago that fate will bring what fate brings. I can rage against it, spend my precious days in bitterness, poison my own heart with resistance. Or I can say, this too is my life. This too is the metal I have been given to shape." He picked up a piece of raw iron, dull and unformed. No one asks the iron if it wants to be thrust into the fire. No one asks if it wants to be beaten by the hammer. But without fire, without force, it can never become a blade. It can never fulfill its purpose. The philosopher was silent for a long moment. "You are saying that our difficulties are the fire that shapes us?" I am saying, Demetrius replied, that there is no life without difficulty. The only question is whether you will be shaped by your troubles or shattered by them. And that, my friend, depends entirely on how you meet them. This the Stoics called Amor Fati, the love of fate, not a passive resignation, but an active embrace. To look at everything that happens, the fire, the loss, the unexpected turn, and say, this is mine, this belongs to my story, and I will make something of it. As you rest tonight, consider the fires you have walked through, the losses you have survived. You are still here. You have been shaped, not shattered. And perhaps, in the quiet of this moment, you might offer a small nod of acceptance to all of it. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, they have made you who you are. Rest now. The Physician's Diagnosis. On Memento Mori, the story on remembering you shall also be dead. There was a physician in ancient Rome named Galen, renowned for his wisdom as much as his healing. Wealthy patients would summon him not only for ailments of the body, but for troubles of the mind. One day, a senator came to him in great distress. He paced the physician's chambers, listing his worries. Political rivals who schemed against him, investments that had soured, a son who had disappointed him, a wife who no longer seemed to admire him as she once had. Galen listened patiently, nodding now and then. When the senator finally exhausted himself and fell silent, the physician spoke. I have a diagnosis, he said. The senator leaned forward, eager. You have forgotten that you are going to die. The senator blinked. I beg your pardon? You have forgotten, Galen repeated gently, that your time here is limited, that one day, perhaps soon, perhaps many years from now, but certainly inevitably, you will take your last breath. And when that moment comes, will you wish you had spent more time worrying about your rivals? Will you clutch at your investments as your vision fades? Will you think of all the ways your son disappointed you? Or will you wish you had held him closer? The senator was quiet for a long time. This seems a morbid prescription, physician. On the contrary, Galen said, it is the most life-giving medicine I know. You see, when we remember that our days are numbered, everything changes. The petty grievances fall away. The endless striving relaxes its grip. We begin to ask, what truly matters? What do I want to fill my remaining time with? And suddenly, the answer becomes very clear. He walked to the window and looked out at the bustling streets of Rome. All those people out there, rushing about, accumulating and competing and worrying. Most of them have forgotten. They live as if they have forever, and so they waste their days on things that do not matter. But you, Senator, have been given a gift today. I have reminded you. Now the question is, what will you do with this remembering? The Stoics kept this practice close to their hearts. Memento Mori, they called it. Remember death, not to be morbid but to be awake. To live fully, presently, gratefully, knowing that each moment is a gift that will not be given again. And so tonight, as you lie in the darkness, you might reflect on this. You are alive. Your heart is beating. Breath is moving in and out of your lungs. This is not guaranteed. It is not owed to you. It is a gift, given fresh each moment, and one day it will be given for the last time. But not tonight. Tonight, you are here. And that is enough. That is everything. Let this knowing settle into you not as a weight but as a kind of permission. Permission to let go of what does not matter. Permission to rest. Permission to be grateful for this simple, ordinary, extraordinary moment of being alive. The blacksmith has shown you how to love your fate, even the difficult parts. The physician has reminded you of the gift of being alive. Let these truths settle like snow on quiet ground. There is no need to grasp them tightly. They will remain with you, sinking gently into the soil of your understanding. Breathe. Rest. You are doing beautifully. The Philosopher in Chains. The story on the inner citadel. Let me tell you now of a man named Epictetus. His story begins in darkness, in the lowest place a human being can be, in chains. Epictetus was born a slave in the Roman Empire. He was owned, bought, sold, commanded. He had no freedom of movement, no freedom of speech, no legal rights to speak of. His body belonged to another man. And yet, Epictetus became one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived. How is this possible? The answer lies in a discovery he made during those long years of bondage. He discovered that while his master could control his body, there was a place inside him that no chain could reach. He called this his inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that belonged to him alone. His master could force him to work, but his master could not force him to be angry about it. His master could beat him, but his master could not make him bitter. His master could take away his food, his rest, his comfort, but his master could not take away his thoughts, his judgments, his choice of how to respond to what happened to him. It is not things that disturb us, Epictetus later taught, but our judgments about things. Consider this. Two people experience the same event. One is devastated. The other is unmoved. The event is the same. What differs is what each person tells themselves about it, the meaning they assign, the story they create. A flight is cancelled. One traveler rages and suffers. Another shrugs and finds a quiet corner to read a book. The cancelled flight did not cause their reactions. Their judgments did. Epictetus eventually gained his freedom and opened a school of philosophy. Students came from across the empire to learn from the former slave. And what he taught them again and again was this: you have a choice, always, in every situation, not about what happens to you but about how you meet it. There is a place inside you that cannot be touched by circumstance. A quiet center, a still point, where you remain yourself no matter what storms rage around you. This is your inner citadel. And no one, no boss, no critic, no difficult person, no cruel twist of fate, can enter unless you open the gates. Tonight, as you lie here, imagine this fortress within you. Picture its walls, strong and ancient, built from every challenge you have survived, every difficulty you have weathered. Inside there is warmth and light and peace. This is yours. It has always been yours. Whatever happened today, whatever worries follow you into the night, they stand outside those walls. They cannot enter here. You are safe. You are sovereign. You are free. Rest now within your citadel. The Senator's Garden. The story on living according to nature. In Rome, there lived a senator named Lucius who had accumulated great wealth and power over his long career. His house was filled with treasures from across the empire. He employed dozens of servants. He dined on exotic foods and wore robes of the finest silk. And yet Lucius was deeply unhappy. He could not understand it. He had everything a man could want. Why then did he lie awake at night? Why did food taste like ashes? Why did his achievements feel hollow? One day he confided his troubles to an old friend, a philosopher named Musonius Rufus. Musonius listened, then invited Lucius to visit his home. The senator expected something modest. Philosophers were not known for their wealth, but he was unprepared for what he found. Musonius lived in a small house on the edge of the city. His possessions could fit in a single cart. He wore simple clothes, ate simple food, and spent his days teaching, walking, and tending a small garden. "This is how you live?" Lucius asked, unable to hide his shock. "This is how I live," Musonius replied, smiling. "Come, let me show you something." He led the senator to his garden, where vegetables grew in neat rows and a few fruit trees provided shade. "I planted these with my own hands," Musonius said. "I tend them each morning. I eat what they provide. And when I work in this soil, I feel something I cannot explain. A kind of rightness, as if I am doing what I was made to do." Lucius frowned. "But you could hire someone to do this. You could buy food at the market. Why labor when you don't have to?" "Because, my friend, we are not made for endless comfort." Musonius spoke slowly, each word carrying weight. "We are not made for silk and servants and exotic delicacies. We are made for effort, for simplicity, for work that connects us to the earth and to each other. When we live in accordance with our nature, we flourish. When we live against it, no matter how many luxuries we accumulate, we wither." He picked a ripe fig from a tree and handed it to Lucius. "Taste this." Lucius bit into the figure. It was warm from the sun, perfectly ripe, and somehow sweeter than any of the elaborate desserts his cooks prepared. "Why does this taste so good?" he murmured. "Because it is simple. Because it is true. Because it is enough." The Stoics taught that human beings, like all creatures, have a nature, a way of being that allows them to thrive. For humans, this means living with reason, with virtue, with connection to others, with meaningful work. It does not mean accumulating more than we need, or chasing pleasures that leave us emptier than before. Perhaps tonight you might consider, where in your life have you wandered from your nature? Where have you been convinced that more is better, that comfort is the goal, that ease is the same as happiness? And where might you return to simplicity, to the garden, metaphorically speaking, to the things that make you feel that quiet sense of rightness, that whisper of alignment with who you truly are? You do not need more to be happy. You may, in fact, need less. Let that thought settle gently as you drift. Less striving, less grasping, less complexity, more space, more stillness, more room for what truly matters. The slave found freedom in his own mind. The senator found peace in a garden. Both discovered the same truth, that the good life is not found in external things. It is found within, and in alignment with our deepest nature. Let your breath slow. Let your body grow heavy. The night holds you now, and you are free to rest. The blocked path. The story on the obstacle becoming the way. There is an old story, perhaps legend, perhaps history, it hardly matters which, about a king who wanted to test his people. One night, he ordered his servants to place an enormous boulder in the middle of the main road that led to the city. Then he hid nearby and watched to see what would happen. The first travelers to encounter the boulder were wealthy merchants. They complained loudly about the inconvenience, cursed the king for not maintaining the roads properly, and turned their carts around to find another path. Next came a group of soldiers. They too grumbled and criticized, then marched around the boulder, not even considering whether anything could be done about it. Throughout the day, many people passed. Farmers, craftsmen, nobles, servants. All of them did the same thing. They complained about the obstacle, then went around it. Some blamed the king. Some blamed fate. None did anything about the boulder itself. Finally, as evening approached, a young peasant came down the road. She was carrying a heavy load of vegetables to sell at the market, and she was already tired from a long day's work. When she saw the boulder, she stopped. She set down her load, and instead of complaining or turning back, she began to study the obstacle. Perhaps, she thought, I can move it. Took her nearly an hour. She pushed, she pulled, she dug around the edges. She found a branch to use as a lever. Her muscles ached. Her hands grew raw. But slowly, inch by inch, she moved the boulder to the side of the road. And there, in the place where the boulder had been, she found a small chest. Inside was a purse of gold coins, and a note from the king. This is for whoever removes the boulder. The obstacle itself contained the reward. The Stoics taught that our obstacles are not simply things to be avoided or complained about. They are opportunities. The very thing that seems to block our path may be the path itself. When we face difficulty, when life places a boulder in our road, we have a choice. We can curse our luck and turn back. We can waste our energy on blame and resentment. Or we can approach the obstacle with curiosity, with determination, with the understanding that this challenge has something to teach us. The obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. Think of your own life. The hardest things you have faced. Did they not also teach you the most? Did they not reveal strengths you didn't know you had? Did they not shape you into who you are today? The boulder was heavy. The peasant was tired. But she grew stronger in the moving of it. And she found gold where others saw only stone. What boulders lie in your path tonight? What if, instead of dreading them, you approached them with quiet curiosity? What if the very thing that troubles you is also the thing that will teach you, grow you, reward you in ways you cannot yet imagine? Something to consider in the gentle dark. Rest now. The Archer's Release. The story on non-attachment to outcomes. In the hills of ancient Greece, there lived a master archer named Theron. He was old now, his hair white, his hands weathered by decades of practice. But his aim remained true, and students came from distant lands to learn from him. One day, a young archer arrived, eager and ambitious. He had won many competitions and was confident in his skill. But he wanted more. He wanted to never miss. "Teach me to hit the target every time," he said to Theron. "I want to be perfect." The old master nodded slowly. "Come with me." They walked to the archery range where a target stood at a great distance. Theron handed the young man a bow and a single arrow. "Hit the center," he said. The young archer drew back the string, took careful aim, and released. The arrow flew true and struck near the center of the target. "Good," said Theron. "Now do it again." The young man drew another arrow, aimed, and fired. This time the arrow struck slightly to the left. Again. The third arrow missed the target entirely. The young archer's face reddened with frustration. "What is happening? I am better than this." Theron smiled gently. "Tell me, when you shot the first arrow, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about my form, my breath, the wind." "And the second arrow?" "I was thinking about matching the first shot, about not disappointing you." "And the third?" The young man looked at the ground. "I was thinking about all the shots that would come after, about whether I would ever be perfect, about what you would think of me if I failed." Theron nodded. "You see, young one, you have discovered the great paradox of archery, and of life." He took the bow and nocked an arrow. "When I shoot," he said, "I think only of this moment, this breath, this arrow. I give everything I have to the shot itself, my focus, my skill, my intention. But the moment the arrow leaves my string," he released, and the arrow sang through the air, striking the exact center of the target. "It is no longer mine. Where it lands is not up to me. The wind may shift, the target may move, a bird may fly across its path. I control the shooting. I do not control the landing." He turned to face his student. "This is the secret. Not to stop caring about the outcome, but to release your attachment to it. Do your best work, then let go. Pour yourself into the effort, then surrender the results. This is how you will find peace. And, paradoxically, this is also how you will shoot your best." The Stoics called this the art of doing without grasping, of working without clinging, of giving your all to what you can control, your effort, your intention, your preparation, while holding loosely what you cannot, the outcome. Tonight, As you rest, consider where you have been gripping too tightly. What outcomes have you been trying to force? What results have you been losing sleep over, even though they are no longer in your hands? You have already released your arrows, many of them, and they are flying now through the darkness toward targets you cannot see. Let them go. They will land where they land. Your job tonight is simply to rest, to restore your strength, so that tomorrow, when new arrows are given to you, you will be ready to shoot again. One arrow at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. That is enough. That is everything. The peasant found gold in the obstacle. The archer found peace in the letting go. Both learned to work with life rather than against it, to embrace what comes, to release what goes. Breathe deeply now. Let your hands unclench. Let your jaw soften. There is nothing to hold onto tonight, nothing to control. Only this, the gentle rise and fall of your breath, carrying you softly towards sleep. Letters from Exile, the story on the poverty of busyness. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, an advisor to emperors, a celebrated playwright, a philosopher whose words were quoted throughout the empire. And then, in a single day, he lost it all. Accused of crimes he may or may not have committed, such things are murky in the politics of empire, Seneca was exiled to the island of Corsica. No more grand house, no more influence, no more admirers, just a remote island, rocky and windswept, and years of solitude stretching ahead. Many men would have been destroyed by this. But Seneca, in his exile, discovered something unexpected. He had time. For the first time in decades, he was not rushing from meeting to meeting. He was not managing crises, flattering powerful men, defending his position. He was simply alive, present, awake to the passage of each day. He began to write letters, long, thoughtful letters to friends back in Rome. And in these letters, he reflected on something that had troubled him even at the height of his success: the poverty of busyness. It is not that we have a short time to live, he wrote, but that we waste much of it. Life is long, if you know how to use it. He watched how people filled their days with activity and called themselves important, how they rushed from one task to the next and called themselves productive, how they fell into bed exhausted and called themselves successful. But were they living, or were they merely busy? Seneca began to suspect that busyness was a kind of hiding, a way of avoiding the deeper questions. If you keep moving fast enough, you never have to ask, what is all this for? Am I spending my time on what truly matters? Am I present for my own life, or am I just passing through it at high speed? On his quiet island, with nothing but time and the sea and his own thoughts, Seneca learned to be still. He learned that an hour of genuine presence was worth more than a year of distracted activity. He learned that the rich man is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. And when, after 8 years, he was finally allowed to return to Rome, he was a different man. He moved through the busy city with a new kind of calm. He said no more often. He protected his time like the precious, non-renewable resource it was. Perhaps tonight, in this quiet moment, you might reflect on your own busyness. Not to judge yourself, we all get caught up in the rush, but simply to notice. Where has activity become a habit rather than a choice? Where have you been moving so fast that life has become a blur? There is nothing you need to do about this tonight. Only notice, only breathe, only be here, still and present, in a way that your busy days may not allow. This moment right now is your island, your exile from the rush, a gift of stillness in a noisy world. Receive it, rest in it, let it restore you. The Nurse's Wisdom, the story on preparing for difficulty. In a small village in Sicily, there lived an old nurse named Helena who had spent her entire life caring for others. She had tended the sick, comforted the dying, and held the hands of countless people in their moments of greatest fear. One day, a young mother came to her, distraught. The mother's child was healthy. Her husband was kind. Her home was secure. And yet she could not sleep. She was paralyzed by fear that something terrible would happen, that she would lose everything she loved. "How do you bear it?" she asked Helena. "You have seen so much suffering. How are you not consumed by fear?" Helena invited the young mother to sit beside her, and poured 2 cups of tea. For a long moment, she said nothing, just watched the steam rise and curl in the morning light. "When I was young," she finally said, "I was like you, terrified of loss. I would lie awake imagining all the terrible things that might happen. And when they did happen, as they always do eventually, I was shattered. I thought I could not survive." She took a slow sip of her tea. "But then I learned something. I learned that what we fear most is not the thing itself, but the surprise of it, the shock. We tell ourselves that bad things happen to other people, and when they happen to us, we are ambushed. We are not prepared." "So what did you do?" the young mother asked. "I began to prepare," Helena said, "not with fear, but with acceptance. Each morning, I would sit quietly and acknowledge the truth, that the people I love will one day die, that I will one day die, that everything I cherish can be taken. And instead of running from this truth, I would let it settle into me." "That sounds terrible," the young mother whispered. "It sounds terrible," Helena agreed. "But it is the opposite. Because once I had faced the worst in my imagination, something shifted. The fear loosened its grip. I stopped taking the good things for granted. I began to appreciate each day, each meal, each ordinary moment with the people I loved, because I knew, truly knew, that none of it was guaranteed." She reached across and took the young mother's hand. "This is the gift of difficult thoughts, my dear. When we face them willingly, they lose their power to ambush us, and we gain the power to be truly present for the life we have." The Stoics called this practice Praemeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It was not pessimism. It was preparation. It was a way of disarming fear by looking it directly in the eye. They would ask themselves, "What if I lose my wealth? What if I lose my reputation? What if I lose this person I love?" Not to invite these things, but to make peace with their possibility. To realize that they could survive, that life would continue, that even the worst outcomes are bearable when they are not also shocking. And here is the strange and beautiful paradox. Those who face the possibility of loss most honestly are also those who appreciate what they have most deeply. They do not sleepwalk through their good days, assuming there will always be more. They know, and so they treasure. Tonight, you do not need to dwell on dark possibilities. You have done enough work today. But perhaps, just for a moment, you might feel the weight of how precious this life is. This breath, this heartbeat, these people you love. None of it is guaranteed. And that is what makes it beautiful. That is what makes it worth protecting with your attention, your presence, your care. You are alive right now in this moment. Let that be enough. Let that be everything. The exile found richness in stillness. The nurse found peace in acceptance. Both learned to stop running from busyness, from fear, and to face their lives directly, honestly, with open eyes. You have faced enough today. You have run enough. Tonight is for rest. Let your body sink deeper. Let your mind grow quieter. The stories will keep flowing, soft as water over stones, asking nothing of you but to listen or to drift, whichever comes more easily. The Stoic at the door. The story on responding versus reacting. There was once a Stoic teacher named Paconius Agrippinus who was known for his unshakable calm. No insult could ruffle him. No provocation could make him lose his temper. His students were in awe of this quality, and often asked how he had achieved it. "It is simple," he would say. "I have learned to pause." One day, a man came to his school specifically to test this reputation. He stood in the doorway and began to hurl insults at Agrippinus, mocking his appearance, his intelligence, his philosophy, even his family. The other students tensed, waiting for their teacher to respond. Some prepared to defend him. Others looked away in embarrassment. But Agrippinus simply stood still, watching the man with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. When the man finally ran out of insults and stood panting in the doorway, Agrippinus spoke. "Are you finished?" The man blinked, confused. "Ah, yes. Good. Would you like some water? You seem tired." The man's anger collapsed into bewilderment. He had come prepared for a fight, and there was no one fighting back. After a long, awkward moment, he mumbled something and left. Later, a student asked Agrippinus how he had remained so calm. "I will tell you my secret," the teacher said. "When that man began to shout, I felt what any person would feel. My heart beat faster. Heat rose in my chest. The impulse to shout back, to defend myself, to attack him in return. All of that arose in me. Then how did you resist?" "I did not resist. I simply did not act immediately. You see, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. In that space is our freedom. In that space is our power. The man provided the stimulus, but I chose to pause in that space before selecting my response." He smiled at his students. "An animal cannot do this. When a dog is poked, it bites. When a horse is startled, it runs. But you are not an animal. You have been given the extraordinary gift of reason, of self-awareness. You can feel an impulse and choose not to follow it. You can pause. You can breathe. You can ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this? Who do I want to be in this moment?" This is perhaps the most practical of all Stoic teachings. Not to suppress our emotions, but to create space around them. Not to be ruled by our first impulses, but to pause long enough to choose our response. How many arguments have been started by words spoken too quickly? How many relationships damaged by reactions rather than responses? How many nights of sleep lost to rumination over something said in anger, without thought, without pause? Tonight, as you rest, you might reflect on a moment when you reacted rather than responded. No judgment, we all do this. Just notice, and perhaps set a quiet intention. Tomorrow, when the next provocation comes, you will pause. You will breathe. You will remember that there is a space between stimulus and response, and that in that space you are free. Rest now. The thief who gained nothing. The story on the true source of harm. There is a story told of Epictetus and a thief. It goes like this. One night, a thief broke into the small house where Epictetus lived. He crept through the darkness, looking for valuables to steal. But Epictetus had few possessions, a simple bed, a few books, a lamp. There was almost nothing worth taking. The thief grew frustrated. He kicked over a stool in anger. The noise woke Epictetus, who lit his lamp and regarded the intruder calmly. "You have picked the wrong house, my friend," the philosopher said. "I have nothing of value for you here." The thief, embarrassed and angry at his wasted effort, spat at Epictetus and cursed him. "You call yourself a philosopher, but you live like a beggar. What good is your wisdom if you cannot even afford a silver cup?" Epictetus wiped his face and smiled. "Ah," he said, "now you have truly gained nothing." "What do you mean?" the thief demanded. "You came here hoping to take my possessions. But I have none worth taking, so you failed in that. Then you insulted me, hoping perhaps to take my dignity, my peace of mind. But you have failed in that too. Your insults have not disturbed me. Your spit has not shamed me. You have taken nothing. And you have given nothing except a mild inconvenience and a bit of moisture I can easily wipe away. The thief stared at him. But you, Epictetus continued gently, have spent this evening committing a crime, risking imprisonment, damaging your own character. You have stolen nothing from me, but you have taken something from yourself. You are poorer now than when you began. Epictetus then did something unexpected. He invited the thief to sit down. He poured him a cup of water and began to talk. About life, about choices, about the kind of person the thief might still become if he chose differently. The story does not tell us what happened to the thief after that night, but it teaches us something about where harm really comes from. The Stoics believed that no one can truly harm you without your cooperation. They can take your things, but things can be replaced. They can insult you, but insults are just sounds, just opinions. They can even imprison your body, but your mind, your inner citadel, remains your own. The only real harm is the harm we do to our own character. When we lie, we harm ourselves. When we cheat, we harm ourselves. When we act from anger or cruelty or greed, we are the ones who suffer, regardless of whether we are caught or punished. This is not to say that injustice does not matter, or that we should not protect ourselves from those who would wrong us. But it is to remember that our peace of mind does not depend on how others behave. It depends on how we respond. Tonight, if there is someone who has wronged you, whose words or actions are still circling in your mind, disturbing your rest, consider this: have they really harmed you? Or have they only offered you an opportunity to practice your own virtue, your own equanimity, your own unshakable calm? What they did belongs to them. How you respond belongs to you. Let them keep their offense. You keep your peace. The teacher found freedom in the pause. The thief discovered he had stolen nothing. Both stories point to the same truth, that our inner world is our own, that no one can enter without our permission, that peace is always a choice in every moment regardless of what is happening around us. Rest now. Let your guard down. In the safety of this night, there is nothing to defend, nothing to protect. You are held. You are safe. And you can let go. Story 13. The Journey Without Arrival. The story on the process, not the destination. There was once a sailor who dreamed of reaching a legendary island far across the sea. It was said that on this island there was perfect peace, perfect beauty, perfect happiness. Every sailor dreamed of finding it. Few ever tried. But this sailor, his name was Nikolaos, was determined. He saved for years to buy a boat. He studied maps and charts. He consulted with every old sailor who might know the way. And finally, one spring morning, he set out. The journey was long and difficult. Storms battered his small boat. Supplies ran low. There were days when he questioned everything: his sanity, his judgment, his dream. But he pressed on. After many months, he spotted land on the horizon. His heart leapt. He sailed toward it with renewed energy, certain that his destination was at hand. But when he arrived, he found a small, ordinary island with a small, ordinary village. The people were kind, but the island was not the paradise he had imagined. "Is there another island beyond this one?" he asked an old woman at the harbor. "Always," she said, smiling. "There is always another island beyond." Nikolaos felt crushing disappointment, but he was not ready to give up. He resupplied and set off again, and again, and again. Each island he reached was not the one he sought. Years passed. Nikolaos grew older. His hair turned gray. His hands became weathered and strong. And slowly, something shifted in him. He began to notice the journey itself. the way light played on the water at dawn, the satisfaction of adjusting his sails to catch the wind just right, the kindness of strangers at each new port, the strength he had built, the skills he had learned, the person he had become. One evening, anchored in a quiet cove, he wrote in his journal, "I have not found the legendary island. Perhaps it does not exist. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. But I have found something else. I have found that the sailing itself is the treasure. That I have been so focused on arriving that I nearly missed the miracle of the voyage." He never did find the mythical island, but he sailed until his final days, and those who knew him said he was the happiest man they had ever met. The Stoics understood this. They knew that we often postpone our happiness, placing it always in the future, when I achieve this, when I acquire that, when I finally arrive. But arrival is an illusion. There is always another island beyond. The good life is not found at the destination. It is found in the journey itself, in the practice, the process, the daily effort of becoming who we are meant to be. Tonight, you are not somewhere you need to escape from. You are not on your way to somewhere better. You are here. And here is the only place where life actually happens. Let that sink in. You have already arrived. You are already home. The island you seek is beneath your feet. Rest now in this knowledge. The Borrowed Cup, the story on the nature of possession. Epictetus once told his students a story about a cup. "Imagine," he said, "that you have a cup you love, a beautiful cup, perhaps given to you by someone dear. Every day you drink from it and enjoy its presence." The students nodded. Everyone has such objects, things they have grown attached to, things that bring them comfort. "Now," Epictetus continued, "one day a servant drops the cup and it shatters. How do you respond?" "With anger," one student said. "With grief," said another. "It was my favorite cup." "Yes," said Epictetus. "This is how most people respond. But let me teach you a different way." He leaned forward. "When you first received the cup, you should have said to yourself, 'This is a clay cup. Clay is fragile. One day this cup will break. It may be tomorrow. It may be in 20 years. But it will break. That is the nature of clay." He paused. "In fact, from the very beginning you should say, 'I am enjoying a cup that is already broken. I am drinking from a vessel that is on loan to me from the universe, and one day the universe will take it back.' This is not pessimism. It is simply truth." "But why would I want to think that way?" a student protested. "Wouldn't that ruin my enjoyment?" "On the contrary," Epictetus replied, "it deepens it. When you know something is temporary, you cherish it more fully. You do not take it for granted. And when the cup finally breaks, as it must, you do not fall into despair. You simply say, 'The cup has returned, and I am grateful for the time I had with it.'" He looked around at his students. "This is true not only for cups. It is true for everything you think you own. Your house, your wealth, your health, all borrowed, all temporary. And yes, the people you love, they too are on loan. They too will one day be returned." His voice softened. "This is not meant to make you sad. It is meant to make you free. When you cling to nothing, you can enjoy everything. When you accept that all things pass, you can be fully present for them while they are here." This teaching may seem stark, but it contains a deep tenderness. It is a teaching about love, really, about how to love fully, freely, without the constant fear of loss that poisons so much of our joy. Tonight, as you rest, consider what cups you have been clinging to. What attachments have been causing you anxiety? What fears of loss have been keeping you from fully enjoying what you have right now? You do not have to let go of loving these things, but perhaps you can hold them more lightly. Perhaps you can appreciate them more deeply, knowing that they are temporary. Perhaps you can whisper to them, in the quiet of your heart, I know you are borrowed. I know you will not be mine forever. And I am grateful, so grateful, that you are here now. Let yourself rest with this gentle knowledge. The morning of battle. The story on voluntary discomfort. There was a Roman general named Cato who was famous for an unusual habit. He would regularly make himself uncomfortable on purpose. While his fellow officers slept on soft beds, Cato slept on the hard ground. When others feasted, he ate simple bread and water. He walked barefoot through the streets of Rome, weathered heat and cold without complaint, and generally made his life more difficult than it needed to be. His friends thought him eccentric. His enemies thought him a fool. But Cato knew something they did not. One morning, before a great battle, a young officer came to him in a panic. "General, the supply wagons have not arrived. We have no tents, no bedding, no fine food. The men will suffer tonight." Cato smiled. "Will they? Or will they simply experience what I experience every night?" He put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Let me tell you why I live as I do. It is not because I enjoy discomfort. It is because I want to be free from the fear of discomfort. Most men are slaves twice over, first to their appetites, and then to their fears. They need soft beds, rich food, comfortable temperatures, or they cannot function. They live in constant anxiety that these things will be taken from them." He gestured toward the sleeping camp. "But I have made myself at home in hardship. I have visited discomfort so often that it has become a familiar place. And so when fortune takes away my comforts, as fortune always does, eventually I do not panic. I do not suffer. I simply continue." He looked toward the horizon, where the enemy army waited. "Today, many of my men will face fear for the first time. The loss of comfort will be added to the terror of battle. But not me. I have already made peace with discomfort. I am free to focus on what matters. Leading well, fighting bravely, doing my duty." This practice, what the Stoics called voluntary discomfort, is not masochism. It is training. It is preparation. It is a way of inoculating yourself against the shocks that life will inevitably deliver. When you occasionally skip a meal by choice, hunger loses its power over you. When you take a cold shower now and then, cold becomes just another sensation, not a catastrophe. When you sleep on the floor sometimes, you discover that you can sleep anywhere. And more than this, voluntary discomfort teaches gratitude. When Cato finally did sleep in a soft bed, he appreciated it far more than those who had never known anything else. When he ate a fine meal, it was a genuine pleasure, not a dull expectation. You do not need to become an ascetic to benefit from this teaching. But perhaps you might consider, where has comfort become a cage? What small discomforts have you been avoiding that might, if faced willingly, set you free? Tonight is for rest, but perhaps tomorrow or the day after, you might choose a small voluntary hardship, not to punish yourself, but to train yourself, to expand the range of conditions in which you can be at peace. Let this knowledge rest gently within you as you drift to sleep. The Beggar's Bowl. The story on wealth and want. Diogenes was a philosopher who owned almost nothing. He lived in a large ceramic jar in the marketplace of Athens, begged for his food, and possessed only a wooden bowl and a ragged cloak. One day, he saw a child drinking water from cupped hands. Diogenes immediately smashed his wooden bowl against a rock. "Fool that I am," he said. "I have been carrying unnecessary baggage." This man, who owned nothing, claimed to be the richest person in the world. How could this be? One afternoon, Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, conqueror of nations, ruler of an empire stretching from Greece to India, came to visit Diogenes. He had heard of the strange philosopher and wanted to meet him. Alexander found Diogenes lounging in the sun outside his jar. The great conqueror stood over the beggar, flanked by soldiers in gleaming armor. "I am Alexander," he announced, "king of Macedon, conqueror of Persia. Ask me for anything you desire, and I will grant it." Diogenes squinted up at him, shading his eyes from the sun. "Yes," he said, "I have a request. Could you move a little to the left? You are blocking my sunlight." Alexander's soldiers gasped at the disrespect. But Alexander himself laughed, genuinely delighted. "If I were not Alexander," he said, "I would wish to be Diogenes." To which Diogenes replied, "If I were not Diogenes, I would also wish to be Diogenes." What did this mean? How could a man who owned nothing be happier than a man who owned everything? The answer lies in the nature of want. Alexander was one of the wealthiest men in history, but he was not satisfied. He wanted more land, more glory, more power. His desires always exceeded his possessions. He was a rich man who felt poor. Diogenes, by contrast, had adjusted his desires to match his circumstances. He wanted only what he had: sunlight, food enough to survive, the freedom to think and speak as he pleased. His possessions exceeded his desires. He was a poor man who felt rich. The Stoics understood that wealth is not a matter of how much you have, but of how much you want. If your desires are always one step ahead of your possessions, you will always feel lacking. But if you can learn to want what you already have, you become wealthy instantly, regardless of your circumstances. Tonight you are lying somewhere. Perhaps your bed is not perfect. Perhaps your room is not quiet enough. Perhaps many things in your life are not as you would wish them to be. But you are breathing. You are safe. You have this moment of rest. And if you can simply want what you have just for tonight, you will be richer than kings. Rest in that richness now. The Grieving Father, the story on the nature of loss. Let me tell you now a story that is harder than the others. It concerns grief and loss, and how we might face the worst that life can bring. If this is too heavy for you tonight, let the words wash over you without holding them. They will wait for another time. There was once a father who had one son, his only child, born after years of waiting. Born into his heart so completely that he seemed to contain the father's entire hope for the future. The boy grew, and the father loved him fiercely. He taught him the ways of the world, nurtured his gifts, dreamed of the man he would become. And then, when the boy was 14, he died. A sudden fever, a few days of suffering, and then silence. The father fell into a darkness so complete that those around him feared he would not survive it. For months he did not eat. He did not sleep. He did not speak. He simply sat, as if all the mechanisms of living had been broken inside him. And then one day, a philosopher came to visit. The father would not look at him, but the philosopher sat beside him anyway. "I know what you are suffering," the philosopher said, "and I will not tell you it will pass, or that you will forget, or that there is some greater good in this. All I will say is this: your suffering has a shape. It is the shape of love. Because you did not cause this pain, you would not even know how to protect yourself from it, except that you loved completely." The father said nothing. "Your son is gone. That is true, and it is unbearable, and nothing can change it. But think about what you are grieving. You are not just grieving what he was. You are grieving what he was becoming, what you will never see. You are grieving the future that will not happen. You are grieving, in a way, your own death because he was the continuation of you beyond your time." The philosopher paused. This is the nature of grief. It is not that we mourn the dead. The dead cannot know our mourning, cannot be comforted by it. We mourn the living, we mourn what we ourselves have lost. And this is a peculiar kind of suffering because no one can take it from us, and we would not want them to. Because to let the grief fade completely would mean that the love never mattered. That the love was not real. He stood to leave. But the Stoics know something about grief. We know that you can hold it without being destroyed by it. You can remember without being haunted. You can acknowledge that your son's death was a disaster, a real disaster not to be minimized, and still say that his life was a gift. That you were graced to have him for 14 years. That his existence changed your existence. That you are not the same person you would have been had he never been born. The father looked up. How? He whispered. By separating the loss from the additional suffering you add to it. Your son is gone. That is real suffering. But you can add to that an endless story about how this should not have happened. How the universe is unjust. How your life is ruined. Or you can grieve what has been taken, and also remember what was given. Both are true. Both can be held. That night, for the first time in months, the father slept. He never stopped missing his son. But slowly, the missing became something he could carry. And eventually, he could remember his son's laughter without screaming. He could think about his future without despair. He could say, I am grateful that he lived, and it broke me that he died, and I am still here. This is what the Stoics teach about grief. Not that it will go away, but that suffering and love are intertwined, and if we cannot avoid one, we would not want to. That we can be broken and still continue. That the presence of loss confirms the reality of love. Tonight, if you are grieving, whether for someone recently gone or for a loss that happened long ago, know that your grief is natural. It is not weakness. It is a testament to having loved truly. And there is wisdom in letting it exist without adding to it the burden of believing it should not exist. You are allowed to be broken, and you are allowed to continue. Rest now, holding whatever you need to hold. The letters between friends. The story on Stoic friendship. Among the letters that survived from ancient Rome, there is a correspondence between two philosophers named Seneca and his friend Lucilius. They were separated by great distance. Their lives lived in different cities. Yet their letters reveal an intimacy and depth that span across the centuries. Seneca writes to Lucilius about his struggles, his fears, his failures. He does not write to impress. He writes to be truly known. In one letter, Seneca writes something surprising for a philosopher known for teaching self-sufficiency. He wrote, "We must have someone for whom we live, someone who gives our life meaning. A person may possess everything, but without a friend to share it with, it is all worthless." This same Seneca, who taught that happiness depends on no external thing, who preached that we should need nothing outside ourselves, also wrote, "One of the greatest gifts of philosophy is the gift of friendship, true friendship, where two souls meet in honesty and trust, where we can be truly known and truly loved. How can we reconcile this? How can the Stoics teach both self-sufficiency and deep human connection? The answer lies in understanding what kind of connection they meant. The Stoics did not advocate cold isolation. They advocated for love without desperate need, for connection without anxious clinging, for friendships where we show up fully, give freely, and hold loosely. When you love someone without needing them to make you whole, you can love them more freely. You are not constantly taking from them, demanding that they fill your emptiness. Instead, you are two complete people choosing to share your lives. And when loss comes, as it will, as it always does, you can grieve fully without being destroyed, because your sense of self was never dependent on them. You loved them as a gift, not as a requirement for your survival. Tonight, you might think of the people you love, the friends, the family, the connections that give your life meaning. They are gifts, precious and temporary and irreplaceable. And you do not have to earn them, or cling to them, or fear losing them. You only have to appreciate them, to show up for them while you can, to love them freely, openly, without the chains of desperate need. And if you are lonely tonight, if the connections you long for feel far away, know that this too is part of the human experience. The Stoics understood loneliness. They wrote about it often, and their answer was not to pretend it doesn't matter, but to keep reaching out, to keep offering yourself, to trust that somewhere, somehow, the friends you need are also looking for you. Let yourself rest in the knowledge of those who love you, and in the truth that you are made for connection. The Endless Questions. The story on intellectual humility. In the school of Epictetus, there was a student who asked more questions than anyone else. His name was Arian, and he would later become famous for writing down his teacher's words. But in those early days, he was simply a young man with an inexhaustible curiosity. One day, after a particularly long series of questions, another student grew frustrated. Arian, you have asked the same question in 10 different ways. Surely you have understood by now. But Epictetus raised his hand. Let him ask. A student who thinks he understands after one answer has not truly understood. A student who keeps asking is closer to wisdom than one who stops too soon. Later, Epictetus spoke to the class about the nature of knowledge. There are 3 types of people in the world, he said. The first type knows nothing and knows they know nothing. They are honest, and they can be taught. The second type knows nothing but believes they know everything. They are fools, and they are beyond help. The third type knows something, perhaps even a great deal, but they remain aware of how much they do not know. They are wise, and they never stop learning. He looked at Arian with affection. Our friend here is of the third type. He has learned much, but he has not lost his sense of wonder. He has not closed the door of his mind. And so he will continue to grow long after others have settled into comfortable certainty. The Stoics were not dogmatists. They did not claim to have all the answers. They were, first and foremost, seekers, lovers of wisdom, which is what the word philosopher literally means. They knew that the universe is vast and strange and far beyond the grasp of any human mind. They knew that every answer leads to new questions. Every peak reveals new mountains beyond. And rather than finding this discouraging, they found it liberating. When you admit that you do not know everything, you open yourself to learning. When you release the need to be right, you can actually hear what others are saying. When you approach life with curiosity rather than certainty, every day becomes an opportunity for discovery. Tonight, as you rest, perhaps you can release the need to have it all figured out. You do not have to solve everything. You do not have to understand everything. You are allowed to be confused, to wonder, to hold questions without answers. The mystery is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to be savored, and you have your whole life to explore it. Let this gentle uncertainty carry you towards sleep. Counting the Stars. The story on wonder and gratitude. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, had a practice he returned to throughout his life. Late at night, when the palace was quiet, he would sometimes go out to the gardens and look up at the stars. He would stand there, neck craned back, watching the slow wheel of the heavens, and he would think about how many people, across how many centuries, had looked up at these same stars. Shepherds in ancient fields, sailors lost at sea, lovers stealing moments in the darkness, the dying, taking their last look at the infinite. The stars did not care about empires or politics or the troubles that consumed his days. They simply burned, patient and eternal, indifferent to human drama. When you feel overwhelmed by your problems, he once wrote, look up at the stars. Think about how small you are against the vastness of the cosmos. And then think about how remarkable it is that you exist at all. This was not meant to make him feel insignificant. It was meant to inspire wonder, to remember that existence itself, the fact that there is something rather than nothing, that you are here, conscious, able to ask questions and feel awe is the most astounding miracle of all. The Stoics cultivated wonder deliberately. They looked at ordinary things, a leaf, a stone, a cup of water, and saw them as if for the first time. They paid attention to the small miracles that most people ignore, the complexity of an insect, the feel of sunlight on skin, the improbable fact of being alive on this spinning rock in the vastness of space. This wonder was not separate from their philosophy. It was the foundation of it. When you truly see how extraordinary existence is, gratitude becomes natural. When you truly feel how brief your time here is, each moment becomes precious. Tonight, even in the darkness, wonder is available to you. You do not need to see stars to feel awe. You can feel it in your own breath, moving in and out without any effort from you. You can feel it in your heartbeat, that faithful drum that has been playing since before you were born. You can feel it in the simple fact that you exist, that you are conscious, that you can hear these words and feel something in response. This is not ordinary. Nothing about being alive is ordinary. And if, just for a moment, you can touch that wonder, let it flicker in your chest like a small, warm flame, you will know something the Stoics knew, that gratitude is not a duty, but a natural response to seeing clearly. Rest now in wonder. Rest in gratitude. Rest knowing how extraordinary it is that you are here at all. The unfinished statue, the story on character as a work in progress. In Athens, there lived a sculptor named Phidias who was considered the greatest artist of his age. His statues of the gods stood in temples throughout Greece, so lifelike that people swore they could see the marble breathe. One day, a young apprentice watched his master working on a new sculpture. It was the back of a god's head, the part that would face the wall of the temple, the part no one would ever see. "Master," the apprentice asked, "why do you carve the back with such care? No one will ever look at it. Why not save your effort?" Phidias continued working, his chisel moving with the same precision he would use on the god's face. "The gods will see it," he said. Then he set down his tool and looked at his apprentice. "But more than that, I will see it. And if I do not give my best even when no one is watching, I will know. It will become part of me. Every shortcut we take, every compromise we make when we think no one sees, becomes part of who we are. And eventually, it shows." He gestured to the unfinished marble. "We are not so different from this stone, you and I. Each day, with each choice, we are sculpting ourselves. Every act of courage adds strength to our character. Every act of cowardice chips something away. Every time we choose what is right over what is easy, we become more ourselves." He picked up his chisel again. The question is not whether anyone is watching. The question is, what kind of sculpture are you creating? What kind of person are you becoming? The Stoics believed that character is not fixed at birth. It is built, day by day, choice by choice, through countless small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment but accumulate over time. Your character right now is the sum of every choice you have made up to this point. And your character tomorrow will be shaped by the choices you make today. This is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it means every moment matters. Liberating because it means you always have the power to change. Tonight, as you rest, perhaps you might consider, what kind of sculpture are you becoming? Not with judgment, we are all works in progress, all rough stone in places, but with honest curiosity. What choices have been shaping you? What choices would you like to make going forward? There is no need to answer tonight. The questions themselves are enough. They are part of the sculpting. Let these questions rest gently with you as you sleep. The wine must wait. The story on patience and timing. In the hills of Italy, there lived a vintner whose wine was famous throughout the region. People would travel for days to buy a bottle. They would offer him enormous sums for his secret. But the vintner always said the same thing. There is no secret, only patience. One year, a wealthy merchant came to his vineyard, eager to invest. He was a man who had made his fortune by moving quickly, buying low, selling high, always in motion. "I want to produce a wine like yours," the merchant said. "I have bought land. I have hired workers. How quickly can I expect results?" The vintner smiled. "The vines I planted in my youth are only now producing their best grapes. That is 30 years of waiting. Then, the wine must age in barrels for several years more. Then, in bottles for a few years after that. So, in answer to your question, you can expect results in about 40 years. The merchant was horrified. 40 years. I will be dead by then. Perhaps, the vintner agreed. And yet, 40 years from now, someone will drink this wine and know that it was made with care, with patience, with an understanding that good things cannot be rushed. He poured 2 glasses of his wine, red, deep, catching the afternoon light like a ruby. This wine was started by my father, who never tasted it. He planted vines knowing he would not see their full flourishing. He tended them anyway, and now, I drink to his memory, and tend vines that my son will harvest." The merchant sipped the wine. It was extraordinary, complex, layered, unlike anything he had tasted from faster methods. "Why would anyone do that?" he asked quietly. "Work for something they will never enjoy?" "Because the work itself is the enjoyment," the vintner said. "Because being part of something larger than your own brief life is its own reward. Because some things are worth doing even if you do not see the results." The Stoics understood that we live in a world obsessed with speed. Everyone wants results now. Everyone wants to skip the slow, patient work and jump straight to the harvest. But the richest things in life, deep wisdom, strong character, meaningful relationships, genuine mastery, cannot be rushed. They also understood that we are not just living for ourselves. We are part of a chain that stretches back to those who came before and forward to those who will come after. The virtues we cultivate, the examples we set, the foundations we lay, these echo beyond our own brief span. Tonight, perhaps you can release the pressure to have everything now. Perhaps you can trust that the seeds you are planting, even if you cannot see them grow, are taking root somewhere in the darkness. Perhaps you can find peace in the slow work, the patient work, the work that may not bear fruit in your lifetime but will bear fruit nonetheless. You are tending a vineyard, and the wine will be extraordinary. Sleep now in that patience, that faith, that peaceful knowing. The mirror of judgment, the story on projecting versus perceiving. Seneca once told a story about 2 men who visited the same city on the same day. The first man arrived in a foul mood. He had argued with his family before leaving. His business dealings had gone poorly, and he was nursing a grudge against a former friend who had betrayed him. As he walked through the city, everything confirmed his dark view of the world. The merchants were greedy cheaters trying to swindle him. The citizens were cold and unfriendly, hurrying past without greeting. The streets were dirty, the architecture ugly, the whole place thoroughly unpleasant. He left that evening, muttering that he had never visited a worse city. The second man arrived in a state of contentment. He had just reconciled with an estranged sibling, His work was going well, and he felt at peace with himself and the world. As he walked through the same streets, at the same hour, he saw something entirely different. The merchants were honest tradespeople proud of their crafts. The citizens were respectful of each other's privacy, efficient in their movements. The streets had character. The architecture told stories. The whole place was charming and full of life. He left that evening, wondering why he had waited so long to visit such a delightful city. How can this be? Seneca asked. The city was the same. The streets, the merchants, the citizens, all the same. What differed was the men who walked through them. He concluded, we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. This is one of the most powerful teachings of Stoic philosophy. It is not that your perceptions deceive you, or that reality is subjective. Rather, it is that you bring your inner state to everything you encounter. You project your mood, your expectations, your fears and hopes onto the neutral world around you. When you are anxious, you see dangers everywhere. When you are angry, people seem like enemies. When you are cynical, every act of kindness looks like manipulation. The world becomes a mirror of your inner state. The implications are profound. It means that to change how you see the world, you do not necessarily need to change the world. You need to change yourself. You need to cultivate the inner states that allow you to see clearly. This is not about positive thinking or pretending bad things are good. It is about recognizing that you have far more control over your perception than you might think. That the same event can be met with resentment or acceptance, panic or calm, despair or determination, and which response you choose depends not on the event, but on you. Tonight, as you rest, you might gently review your day through this lens. Were there moments when you saw enemies that might not have been enemies? Threats that might not have been threats? Were there times when your inner state colored your perception in ways you did not recognize at the time? Again, no judgment. We all do this. It is human. But awareness is the first step toward freedom. And tomorrow you might walk through your world, whatever world that is, with cleaner eyes. Rest knowing that you have more power over how you see than you might have realized. The mountain does not come to you. The story on meeting life as it is. High in the mountains of Greece, there lived a shepherd who was known throughout the region for his contentment. Other shepherds complained about the cold, the loneliness, the difficulty of the terrain. But this man seemed genuinely happy, year after year, despite the hardships of his life. One day, a traveler stopped to rest near his flock and asked the secret of his happiness. The shepherd considered the question for a long moment, gazing at the mountain peak that rose above them. "Do you see that mountain?" he asked. "Of course. When I was young, I used to be angry at that mountain, angry that it made my work harder, that I had to climb its slopes, that it blocked the sunlight in the afternoon. I used to shake my fist at it and wish it were somewhere else." He laughed at the memory. But the mountain did not move. It did not care about my anger. It simply was. And one day, I realized that my anger was only hurting me. The mountain was not suffering. I was suffering about a mountain. He looked at the traveler. So I stopped fighting. I stopped wishing things were different. I said to myself, "This is the mountain. This is where I live. I can waste my life resisting what is, or I can make peace with reality and live well within it." He gestured to the rugged landscape around them. "Now I see beauty where I once saw only obstacles. I feel gratitude for the strength this life has given me. And the mountain," he smiled up at the peak, "the mountain has become my friend." The traveler sat with this for a while, then asked, "But what about things that should be changed? Injustices that should be fought? Are we simply supposed to accept everything?" "Ah," said the shepherd, That is a wise question. No, we do not accept what can and should be changed. But we must learn to distinguish between what is a mountain and what is not. Some things can be moved. Many things cannot. Wisdom is knowing the difference, and not wasting your precious life shaking your fist at stone. This teaching is at the heart of Stoic practice. It is about making peace with what is, so that we have energy to change what can be changed. It is about ending the war with reality, not because reality is always good, but because the war itself causes so much unnecessary suffering. Tonight, what mountains are you fighting? What immovable facts are you exhausting yourself against? Not to give up, not to become passive, but to ask honestly, is this a mountain? And if it is, can I find a way to live peacefully in its shadow? The mountain will not come to you, but you can find peace on its slopes. Let yourself rest in acceptance now, and in the wisdom of knowing the difference. Final reflection. The long night. We have come to the end of our journey together. Through stories and silences, through ancient wisdom and gentle invitations. We have walked the path that the Stoics walked so many centuries ago. They were not so different from you, these philosophers. They lay awake at night worrying about the future. They replayed past mistakes in their minds. They struggled with anger, with fear, with the ache of loss. They were human, fully human, and they never pretended otherwise. But they found something, a way of being in the world that brought them peace. Not by escaping life, but by meeting it directly. Not by suppressing feeling, but by feeling fully and responding wisely. Not by controlling the universe, but by controlling the one thing that was theirs to control. Their own minds, their own choices, their own way of being. And they left this wisdom for us. Across the centuries, through wars and empires and the rise and fall of countless civilizations, these teachings have survived. Because they are true. Because they work. Because the human heart has not changed so much in 2,000 years. And the medicine that healed then can heal now. You have received some of that medicine tonight. Not all of it. A lifetime would not be enough for that. But enough, perhaps, to plant some seeds. Seeds of patience, of perspective, of acceptance. Seeds of courage, of wonder, of quiet joy. And now it is time to rest. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let your breath deepen. Feel the weight of your body, held by whatever surface supports you. You are safe. You are at peace. And everything you need to know, you already know. It is written in your bones, in your breath, in the slow rhythm of your heart. Tomorrow will bring its challenges. Next week, next month, next year, life will continue to surprise you, to test you, to ask things of you that feel impossible. This is the nature of being alive. But you will meet those challenges as the Stoics met theirs. One moment at a time, one choice at a time, with patience and wisdom and courage. You will fall, and you will rise. You will forget what you have learned, and then you will remember. You will struggle, and you will find peace again. This is the path. This is the practice. This is the good life. For now, let it all go. The past is a memory. The future is a dream. Only this moment is real. This soft, dark, gentle moment. And in this moment, you are exactly where you need to be. Rest now, dear traveler. The night holds you. The stars keep watch. And somewhere, across the vast distances of time, the old philosophers are smiling, because you are continuing their work. You are keeping the wisdom alive. You are part of the great chain of seekers, stretching back to the beginning and forward to the end. You are not alone. You are never alone. Sleep well,